The desert sun, a relentless hammer, beat down on the corrugated tin roof of the desert safehouse with portable money counter humming. Even through the tinted windows of my unmarked vehicle, I could feel the heat radiating off the parched earth, distorting the air above the distant mesas into shimmering mirages. Dust devils danced in the periphery, small, chaotic spirits of the wasteland. The official dispatch had been terse. Prominent tech executive, apparent suicide. Another one for the books, another life extinguished under the weight of an invisible burden. My internal monologue was already drafting the report, the familiar, sterile language of forensic analysis. I stepped out, the dry air immediately clinging to my clothes, tasting of sand and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet. The local detective, a man whose face was already etched with the weariness of 1,000 similar scenes, offered a curt nod. "Blake O'Connell. Thanks for getting out here so fast. Looks pretty cut and dried." "They always do," I replied, my voice a low rumble. I pulled on a pair of nitrile gloves, the thin material a second skin against the abrasive reality of the world. My eyes, accustomed to dissecting scenes into their most granular components, swept over the exterior of the safehouse. No obvious signs of forced entry. The sand around the single, heavy steel door was undisturbed save for the tire tracks of the first responders and the detective's own vehicle. Inside, the air was thick, stale, and surprisingly cool, a testament to the safehouse's robust construction. The first thing that assaulted my senses wasn't the expected scent of decay, but a peculiar mix of ozone and fresh linen. It sat on a reinforced steel table in the center of the main room, a stack of bundled currency beside it, the display frozen on a staggering figure. My gaze lingered on it for a moment, a strange detail for a suicide scene. The executive lay slumped against one wall, a high-caliber pistol still clutched loosely in his right hand. His eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, a silent accusation against the polished steel panels. The detective gestured vaguely. Shot himself. He was found him like this morning. Looks like he'd been here a while. No note, no witnesses. Just this. I approached the body with the practiced detachment of years. I knelt, my eyes scanning, absorbing. The blood spatter was consistent with a contact wound, a dark, star-shaped pattern on the wall behind him. The pistol felt heavy, cold, and strangely clean in my gloved hand. No smudges, no drag marks, just the faint texture of its grip. "Any other weapons found?" I asked, my voice flat. "Just that one," the detective confirmed. His personal protection detail confirmed it was his. Kept it for security. The detective rolled his eyes, a familiar gesture for those who dealt with the eccentricities of the ultra-rich. I began my meticulous work, a dance of observation and documentation. The victim's clothing was expensive, tailored, but rumpled, as if he'd been here for some time. There was a faint sheen of sweat on his forehead, dried now, and a subtle bruising on his left temple. Not enough to suggest a struggle, perhaps just a fall. But it caught my attention. My gaze drifted to his hands. The right, still loosely gripping the pistol, was pale, the fingers slightly splayed. The left, however, was clenched into a tight fist. This was my first true point of contention. A man taking his own life rarely maintains such tension in a non-dominant hand after the fact. It suggested a struggle, or perhaps a final desperate act to hold on to something. Carefully, I pried open the left hand. His palm was empty, but the skin was slightly abraded. A faint, almost invisible red mark running across the calloused base of his thumb. Not a fresh wound, but not old either. It looked like he'd been holding something small, something with a rough edge. A chip, perhaps? A piece of plastic? My eyes swept the floor around him, the pristine concrete, the discarded wrappers of energy bars, the empty water bottles. Nothing. The pistol, a sleek, custom-made piece, felt too light, too unburdened. I examined the grip again, turning it under the beam of my handheld light. No residue. Not a single particle of gunpowder or skin cells that didn't belong to the victim. But more disturbingly, there was no faint outline of the executive's hand oils or sweat, none of the microscopic grime that would accumulate from even a brief, intense grip. It was almost too clean. My brow furrowed. It was the grip of a gun that had been carefully wiped down, not one that had been pressed into a desperate final act. I moved to the adjacent wall, studying the blood spatter. The pattern was typical for a contact wound, but the trajectory seemed slightly off. If he had held the gun himself, pressed to his temple, the angle of impact and the resulting spray should have been more contained, more focused. This felt wider, more diffuse, as if the weapon had been held a fraction of an inch away, or perhaps at a slightly different angle than a self-inflicted shot. The portable money counter continued its soft, rhythmic whir-click-whir, a relentless reminder of the vast sums of money that had flowed through this sterile room. My gut clenched. The pristine gun, the subtly off spatter, the abraded palm, the absence of a struggle. It all coalesced into a dissonant chord. This wasn't a suicide. This was staged. This was just the beginning. The blood spatter was consistent with a close-range discharge, but something about the pattern on the far wall, a subtle fanning inconsistent with the trajectory from the victim's position, snagged my attention. It was too wide, too diffuse for the angle, as if an invisible hand had nudged the trajectory just so. My gaze swept the opulent living room, the pristine surfaces, the abstract art that probably cost more than my annual salary. Nothing seemed overtly out of place, yet everything felt meticulously arranged. Too perfect. The scene screamed suicide, a desperate act by a man under immense corporate pressure. But my gut, honed by years of sifting through staged realities, whispered otherwise. I knelt, my eyes scanning, absorbing every minute detail. The air was still, thick with the metallic scent of fresh blood and a faint, almost imperceptible undertone of something else. A dry, mineral dust that felt utterly alien to this sealed, air-conditioned penthouse. It was like a ghost of the desert had drifted in, clinging to the expensive fabrics, settling in the deep pile of the imported rug. I reached for my kit, the familiar weight of the tools a comfort, a tangible link to logic in a scene designed to mislead. The preliminary police report, already glanced at on my tablet, called it a clear-cut, self-inflicted wound. The detective, a burly man whose patience for forensic nuance was thinner than a single-ply tissue, had practically stamped "case closed" before I'd even arrived, his dismissive grunt still echoing in my ears. But that faint dust, it wasn't from the city's filtered air, and it certainly wasn't a natural element of this high-rise sanctuary. My gloved fingers meticulously traced the victim's jacket lapel. A single, almost invisible synthetic fiber, no larger than an eyelash, clung tenaciously to the dark wool. It was a hue I didn't recognize, a subtle metallic green, unlike anything in the apartment's decor or the victim's own clothing. I carefully collected it with precision tweezers, sealing it in a sterile evidence bag. This was the kind of detail that could unravel a carefully constructed lie. Then I focused on the pistol. Its grip was wet with blood, obscuring much. But beneath the crimson, I detected a faint, greasy film, almost imperceptible to the naked eye. Not skin oil, not sweat. Certainly not a natural byproduct of firearm discharge. Something else entirely. I swapped it carefully, adding another sample to my growing collection. The more I looked, the more the perfection of the scene began to fray at the edges, revealing the sloppy seams of a cover-up. The victim's left hand, surprisingly relaxed around the weapon, felt wrong. Too loose, too passive for a final, desperate grip. Back in my mobile lab unit, parked discreetly a block away, the hum of the ventilation system was a familiar drone, a counterpoint to the city's distant murmur. I worked methodically, the sterile environment a stark contrast to the luxurious chaos of the penthouse. First, the blood spatter. I uploaded the high-resolution images to the trajectory analysis software. The initial assessment held a close-range discharge. The software highlighted an additional, smaller point of origin, a secondary impact, extremely subtle, suggesting a brief, violent struggle or a second minor discharge before the fatal one. This wasn't a clean, solitary act. It was almost imperceptible, easy to miss for anyone not meticulously searching for it. A detail that absolutely contradicted the suicide narrative. Next, the fiber. Under the electron microscope, the metallic green shimmered with an unnatural brilliance, unlike any natural or common synthetic fiber I'd ever encountered. Its composition was complex, a blend of polymers and a rare earth element I couldn't immediately place. It certainly wasn't from any commercial garment I knew, nor from the apartment's furnishings. It felt industrial, specialized, perhaps even custom-made. My mind immediately raced through possibilities, trying to link it to the faint desert dust I'd noticed. A specific environment, perhaps a uniform or specialized equipment. And then, the residue from the pistol grip, the gas chromat. The image of the tech executive slumped against the ornate fireplace remained etched in my mind, but it was the anomaly in the blood spatter that truly held my attention. That subtle fanning, a whisper of inconsistency on the far wall, kept replaying. It defied the expected physics of the close-range discharge. My gut, a well-calibrated instrument honed by years of sifting through the detritus of tragedy, screamed foul play. Back in the sterile confines of my lab, the fluorescent lights hummed, a stark contrast to the muted grandeur of the executive's penthouse. I laid out the photographic evidence, the high-resolution shots of the spatter pattern enlarged to poster size. My hands, gloved and steady, moved across the images, tracing imaginary lines, calculating angles. The initial trajectory was clear enough, consistent with the firearm's position relative to the victim. But then, there was the deviation. A diffuse, almost ghost-like expansion of droplets that didn't align with the primary impact point. I set up the laser trajectory system, a network of precision lasers and sensors that could map the exact path of projectiles and fragments. One by one, I fed in the data points from the spatter samples I'd collected. The system projected a three-dimensional model of the scene onto a large screen, a digital reconstruction of the fatal moment. The primary spatter patterns formed a tight, predictable cone, but the secondary anomalous pattern registered as if a fleeting obstruction had briefly entered the path of the spray, just meters from the impact. It wasn't a ricochet. The wall showed no signs of secondary projectile impact. It was something that had interacted with the airborne blood itself, disturbing its natural dispersion. A hand, a fabric, a sudden movement of an object. Something had been there, momentarily. This wasn't a suicide. This was a staged suicide, and someone had been sloppy, or perhaps too confident. My focus shifted to the personal effects collected from the scene. The executive's wallet, keys, and a sleek, expensive smartwatch lay on a clean tray. Nothing unusual. Then, a custom-made fountain pen, retrieved from his jacket pocket. It was heavy, crafted from brushed titanium, with an intricate engraving near the cap. A collector's item, perhaps. I ran it under the micro-CT scanner. The internal structure appeared normal, the ink reservoir and nib assembly precisely engineered. But then, a flicker on the screen, an almost imperceptible seam where no seam should be. My fingers, guided by years of practice, found the almost invisible release mechanism. A minute twist of the cap, a slight pressure on the barrel, and the pen separated, revealing not just the ink cartridge, but a tiny wafer-thin micro SD card nestled within a false compartment. My breath hitched. This wasn't merely a hidden storage device. It was a deliberately hidden storage device, concealed with professional precision. This pen wasn't just a status symbol. It was a clandestine vault. I carefully extracted the card, placing it into a specialized reader. The screen flickered, displaying a single encrypted folder. The encryption was robust, but not insurmountable for the tools at my disposal. Hours blurred into a focused trance as I ran decryption algorithms, my fingers flying across the keyboard, feeding the system known patterns and brute-forcing the unknown. The lab remained silent, save for the rhythmic click of the keyboard and the low hum of the processors. Finally, a cascade of green text signaled success. The folder opened. Inside, there wasn't a trove of corporate secrets, nor illicit photographs. There were only 3 files, 2 encrypted documents, and 1 high-resolution image. I opened the image first. It was a photograph taken from a distance of a nondescript building. Low-slung, made of sun-baked adobe, it blended almost perfectly into the arid ochre landscape surrounding it. The sky above was an unbroken expanse of pale blue, hinting at relentless heat. What stood out, however, wasn't the building itself, but the interior, visible through a wide, open doorway. Stacks of bundled cash, neatly arranged on long tables, were bathed in the harsh glow of what looked like industrial-grade floodlights. In the foreground, partially obscured by a shadow, I could make out the distinct rhythmic whirring of a portable money counter, its digital display a blur of numbers. My mind raced, connecting the dots. The tech executive, a public face of innovation and clean corporate dealings, had a connection to this place. This wasn't some casual vacation photo. This was a snapshot of an operation, a clandestine financial hub, tucked away in anonymity. The implications hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just a murder staged as a suicide. It was a deliberate silencing. The executive wasn't just a victim. He was involved, deeply entangled in something far more extensive than I could have ever imagined. Corporate espionage? Political corruption? The sheer volume of cash suggested something far grander, far more dangerous. I leaned back in my chair, the image of the desert safehouse burning into my vision. The case had just cracked wide open, revealing a chasm I was only beginning to perceive. The air around me crackled with an unspoken tension, a premonition of the intricate, perilous path that now lay before me. My meticulous work had not only confirmed my suspicions, but had just pulled me into a world where money, power, and death were inextricably linked. The stale coffee in my mug had long gone cold, a bitter echo of the morning's taste, as I reviewed the slides one last time. Each data point, each magnified image, built an undeniable truth. The fanning pattern of the blood spatter, that subtle inconsistency on the far wall, defied the expected physics of a close-range, self-inflicted gunshot. It wasn't a clean, radial disbursement. It was pushed. I straightened my tie, the knot feeling like a noose, and carried my tablet into the briefing room. The polished mahogany table gleamed under the fluorescent lights, reflecting the stern faces already seated. My section chief, a man whose career was built on efficiency and avoiding waves, sat at the head. Beside him was the lead detective, a man with a perpetually furrowed brow and an air of quiet authority, who had already declared the case an open and shut suicide. As per the initial assessment, the scene appeared consistent with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I clicked to the next slide, a close-up of the firearm. The weapon, a .38 caliber revolver, was found clutched in the deceased's right hand. Grip patterns were consistent with his prints. "So, suicide," the lead detective stated, leaning back, his arms crossed. It wasn't a question. "Not entirely," I countered, my voice steady despite the prickle of anticipation in my gut. I advanced to the blood spatter analysis. This is where the inconsistencies begin. While the primary impact spatter aligns with the wound, I've identified a distinct secondary spatter pattern on the wall opposite the deceased. A subtle fanning, wider than expected for the trajectory and velocity, originating from the primary impact zone. I zoomed in, highlighting the anomaly with a digital pointer. "Are you suggesting the body was moved, O'Connell?" or that the weapon was discharged while the body was already in motion, or supported in a way inconsistent with a self-inflicted shot in that precise location, I clarified. Moving to the next slide, a microscopic view of the executive's hand. Furthermore, while his prints are on the weapon, there are faint, almost imperceptible transfer marks, consistent with a gloved hand, overlying his own. Not a full print, but a subtle smudging, a displacement of skin oils. The lead detective scoffed, a low sound that vibrated through the room. Gloves? Come on, O'Connell. People handle things all the time. You're overanalyzing dust. I'm analyzing evidence, detective, I replied, meeting his gaze. And these are not dust. They are specific, minute alterations to the surface of the weapon, consistent with a secondary contact. I moved to my final point, the lack of defensive wounds or struggle, but also the unnatural stillness of the scene. The scene is too clean. No knocked-over objects, no signs of a struggle. Yet the blood spatter tells a different story. Blake, we have a prominent individual, a clear cause of death, and a weapon found in hand. The family is grieving, the media is watching. A quick, definitive resolution is in everyone's best interest. His words were a thinly veiled directive. My interest is in the truth, Chief, I said, my voice firm. The evidence suggests otherwise. This wasn't a straightforward suicide. The lead detective slammed his palm lightly on the table, a sharp sound in the quiet room. What are you implying? That someone else was there? And then what? They carefully placed the gun, cleaned up, and then walked away without leaving a single other trace? It's a fantasy, O'Connell. You're looking for ghosts. The meeting ended without resolution. The lead detective simply rose and left, his silence more damning than any accusation. My findings were dismissed, my integrity questioned. But the fanning spatter, the ghost of a gloved hand, they clung to me. I wasn't looking for ghosts, I was looking at facts. The pressure to conform was immense, a suffocating blanket, but it only fueled my resolve. There was something else, something I hadn't presented in the meeting. A faint metallic residue on the executive's shoe. Not soil, not dust, but almost microscopic flecks of what appeared to be iron oxide, mixed with a fine, almost crystalline sand. It was an anomaly I'd set aside, too obscure for the initial presentation, but now it nagged at me. I spent the next few hours cross-referencing geological surveys, industrial material databases, anything that might match the unique particulate signature. My search led me down an obscure rabbit hole, to a defunct mining operation far out in the Mojave, an area known for its unique mineral composition. It was a long shot, but I had nothing to lose. The sun was a brutal orange smear on the horizon when I finally pulled my unmarked vehicle off the main highway onto a barely visible track of hard-packed dirt and loose gravel. Dust plumed behind me, settling slowly in the still, hot air. The landscape was a desolate expanse of scrub brush and jagged, rust-colored rock formations. A few miles in, nestled deep within a natural depression, I saw it. A low-slung, cinder-block structure, painted a faded, sandy beige, blending almost perfectly with the surroundings. No windows, just a single, heavy steel door. As I cut the engine, the sudden silence was absolute, save for the dry whisper of wind. Then, from within the structure, a faint rhythmic sound reached me, carried on the desert air. A distinctive mechanical purr, rising and falling with a precise, almost hypnotic cadence. The sound was incongruous, unsettling, in this desolate, forgotten place. The low, insistent drone of the money counter, which I'd left running in the corner as a kind of white noise against the vast silence of the surrounding emptiness, was the only constant companion. This was my sanctuary, a place far removed from prying eyes and the subtle but undeniable pressure from my section chief. I spread the items I'd salvaged from the executive's penthouse across a worn metal table. The official report had dismissed them as personal effects, nothing more. But I'd seen the flicker in the executive's eyes in the post-mortem photos. a subtle tension that spoke of something beyond despair. I trusted my gut. First, the executive's custom-made fountain pen. A solid piece of craftsmanship weighted perfectly. I held it under a high-intensity UV light. Nothing. No hidden inks, no invisible markings. I ran my thumb over the polished barrel, feeling for any imperfections, any subtle seam. The metal was cool, smooth. I picked up a small jeweler's loupe, its lens magnifying the intricate details of the nib. Still nothing. My initial hope for a quick win faded, replaced by the familiar grind of methodical investigation. Next, a pair of expensive cufflinks. Gold, with a distinctive, almost geometric pattern. They felt heavier than they should have for their size. I clicked one open, examining the hinge mechanism. Standard, robust. But as I rotated the other cufflink, the light from my workbench lamp caught something. A minute scratch, almost invisible on the flat inner surface. Not a random blemish, but a deliberate mark. I brought the loupe back, focusing. The scratch wasn't just a scratch. It was a hairline groove, tracing a minuscule, almost imperceptible symbol. It was so small, so precise, it had to have been laser-etched. I carefully cleaned the surface with a cotton swab and a drop of isopropyl alcohol, then positioned the cufflink under my portable microscope, connecting it to a small monitor. The symbol resolved into view. A stylized O, omega. Not the Greek letter, but a specific corporate logo. I recognized it immediately. Omega Global Tech, one of the largest, most influential tech conglomerates on the planet, a direct competitor to the executive's own company. This was more than a subtle inconsistency. It was a whisper and a scream. My breath hitched. The implication hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just about a troubled executive. This was corporate espionage or worse. Why would a rival company's logo be etched onto a personal item hidden so meticulously? And why would it have been overlooked by the initial sweep? I pulled out my secure tablet, its screen a stark blue glow in the dim safehouse. My fingers moved swiftly, accessing restricted databases. I started digging, looking for any recent acquisitions, any major personnel shifts, any legal disputes with the executive's firm. The data scrolled by, a torrent of information. Then I saw it. A shell corporation, Aegis Solutions, recently acquired by Omega Global Tech, had been involved in a series of highly secretive land purchases in the same region where the executive had been developing his breakthrough energy project. But Aegis Solutions wasn't just a shell. Its board of directors included a name I recognized. A high-ranking political operative, a known fixer for a prominent senator. The pieces were starting to slot together, forming a picture far uglier than I'd anticipated. The executive wasn't just competing with Omega Global Tech. He was actively being targeted by them, likely for his energy project. And the involvement of a political figure through a shell corporation indicated a level of influence that transcended mere corporate rivalry. This was a direct, dangerous link. I leaned back, the metal chair groaning under my weight. The suicide suddenly seemed a lot less straightforward. And now I had proof. A tiny, almost invisible mark that pointed directly to powerful players. A sudden, sharp crack from the corner of the safehouse made me jump. I froze, my hand instinctively reaching for the tactical knife strapped to my ankle. The power had flickered, just for a second. The money counter remained silent. Had the power grid been hit? Or was this something more localized? My gaze swept the room, my senses suddenly hyper-alert. The single window, heavily reinforced, showed only the inky blackness of the desert night. No sound, no movement. I was no longer just an investigator chasing a hunch. I had found the thread, and in pulling it, I had exposed myself. The hunters would know. The realization was a bitter taste in my mouth. I was in their crosshairs now. My mind replayed the images from the tech executive's residence, the subtle inconsistencies, the almost imperceptible alterations that screamed staging to my forensic instincts. And then, the threat. Not explicit, but a chilling undercurrent that had sent me packing my few essentials and driving for hours into the arid expanse. I was no longer just investigating a death. I was uncovering a meticulously hidden truth, and someone powerful didn't want it found. The problem was, I was operating in a vacuum. My usual channels were compromised, my colleagues likely under scrutiny, or worse, unwitting pawns. I needed someone outside the system, someone with a reason to listen and the means to act, someone who wouldn't dismiss my fringe theories. My gaze drifted to the crumpled newspaper on the small, rickety table, an old headline screaming about a data breach and a journalist's fall from grace. Eleanor Vance. She'd been a sharp, relentless investigative reporter, known for digging into corporate malfeasance before a particularly nasty smear campaign had effectively ended her career. Disgraced, isolated, and with nothing left to lose, he was exactly the kind of unlikely ally I needed. I found her number in an old professional directory and stared at the digits, hesitating. Would she even remember me? Would she care? The money counter hummed its relentless song. Haven't heard that name in years. What do you want? Her voice held a flinty edge, the kind forged by betrayal. I have a case, I began, choosing my words carefully. A recent one. Looks like a suicide, but it isn't. And I think it connects to something you were working on before you went quiet. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost feel her calculating. You think you've got a scoop, O'Connell? That's rich. I'm out of the game. I think I've got a pattern, I corrected, my voice dropping to a low, insistent tone. And I think if I try to go public alone, I'll end up another statistic. I need someone who knows how to connect the dots, someone who isn't afraid of powerful enemies, someone who's already been through the fire. She sighed, a sound that carried the weight of years. Where are you? I gave her a secure drop point, a forgotten diner off a highway 3 hours north, promising to be there by dawn. She didn't say she'd come, but she didn't say she wouldn't. That was enough. The diner was a relic, chrome peeling, neon sign flickering intermittently. I sat in a booth near the window, nursing a lukewarm coffee, watching the first blush of dawn paint the eastern sky. A beat-up sedan pulled into the parking lot, and a woman emerged. Her face was sharper than I remembered, etched with cynicism, but her eyes still held that fierce, intelligent spark. Eleanor Vance. She slid into the booth opposite me, not bothering with pleasantries. All right, O'Connell, you got 3 minutes. I laid out the facts, starting with the tech executive, Marcus Thorne. I detailed the impossible trajectory of the fall, the misplaced personal effects, the subtle chemical residue on the window frame, the specific brand of expensive custom-made shoe Thorne wore, and how the scuff marks on the sill didn't match. I explained the anomaly in the security footage, the brief, almost imperceptible flicker that suggested a splice. It was designed to look like a desperate leap, I concluded. But the evidence tells a different story. It was a push, and then the scene was meticulously altered. Too meticulously. Eleanor listened, her gaze unwavering, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned back, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. You're right, she said, her voice quiet but firm. It's a pattern. Reveal discovery. She pulled a worn, leather-bound notebook from her bag, its pages filled with meticulous handwriting. Thorne isn't the first, or the second, or even the third. A logistics magnate, drowned in a boating accident, right before a major government contract bid. Cutting-edge technology. And their deaths always come at a critical juncture, conveniently removing an obstacle. Precisely, Eleanor confirmed, her eyes alight with a dangerous fire I recognized, a reflection of my own determination. And every single one of them had a seemingly plausible cause of death. with just enough lingering questions that I couldn't let it go. Autopsies that were rushed, evidence that disappeared, official narratives pushed hard and fast. We sat there, the aroma of stale coffee and fried grease filling the air, the morning sun now streaming through the grimy window. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying precision. This wasn't just corporate espionage. It was a systematic elimination, a quiet purge of anyone who threatened a far larger, more insidious agenda. The suicides and accidents were simply the most efficient way to maintain control without drawing undue attention. "They're clearing the field," I murmured, the weight of the realization settling heavily on my shoulders. Removing dissenters, eliminating inconvenient truths, all under the guise of unfortunate circumstance. Eleanor nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the names in his notebook. "And now, Blake O'Connell, you've stumbled into their crosshairs. They know you saw something at Thorns. They know you're not buying the official story." Her eyes met mine, a shared understanding passing between us. The question now isn't just what they're doing, who they are. How many more bodies they're willing to stack up to keep their secrets buried. The low hum of the desert safehouse's money counter felt a million miles away, replaced by the silent, relentless ticking of a clock I hadn't even known was counting down. Eleanor's words had burrowed under my skin, nesting in the quiet corners of my thoughts as I navigated the familiar streets back to my facility. They know you're not buying the official story. The cool evening air offered no comfort, only a crisp reminder of how exposed I felt. I pulled my vehicle into the secure underground parking, the concrete walls echoing the low rumble of the engine. The silence that followed felt heavy, expectant. Inside, my lab was exactly as I'd left it. Organized, sterile, a sanctuary of data and evidence. Yet, a prickle of unease crawled up my spine. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating before I logged into my secured server. Thorne's case files were locked down, encrypted, a digital fortress I'd built myself. I ran a quick integrity check, watching the progress bar crawl across the screen. Everything appeared normal. Too normal. My eyes narrowed. I wasn't looking for a deleted file or a glaring hack. I was looking for the ghost in the machine, the subtle ripple that only a forensic eye would catch. I pulled up the metadata logs, line after meticulous line of timestamps and access records. Most of it was mine, or automated system entries. Then, a cluster of anomalies surfaced. Small shifts in creation dates for temporary system files, a fractional discrepancy in the checksum of an archived email, a user account with a single fleeting login from an unfamiliar IP address, an IP that had been purged from the logs almost immediately after. It wasn't an attack designed to destroy. It was designed to alter, to subtly nudge the narrative, to plant seeds of doubt in any subsequent review. They hadn't tried to erase my work. They'd tried to subtly corrupt it. A cold certainty settled in my gut. Eleanor hadn't been guessing. They were already inside. My sanctuary had been breached. My phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring, watching the display. It rang twice more before stopping. A moment later, a text message appeared. "We know you're not alone," a direct threat. They weren't just tampering with data. They were escalating. I needed to move. My lab was compromised, my communications likely monitored. I grabbed a small, reinforced field kit, a tablet, a secure drive, a few specialized tools, and left the building through a service exit, bypassing the main surveillance cameras. The night air was sharper now, the city lights a blurry backdrop to my racing thoughts. I merged into the flow of traffic, constantly checking my rearview mirror, varying my speed, making unexpected turns. I was a ghost in the urban sprawl, using every trick I knew to shake any potential tail. The altered data, the anonymous threat. They wanted me off the case, but not dead. Not yet. They wanted me to believe their version, or at least to be too afraid to challenge it. But fear wasn't my primary driver. determination was. And I needed to find out who was behind this. A lead from Thorne's encrypted drive, a fragmented GPS coordinate that had seemed insignificant at first, now screamed for attention. It was far out, in the desolate stretches beyond the city's reach. A long shot, but the only uncompromised path I had. Hours later, the asphalt ribbon of the highway gave way to a gravel track, kicking up plumes of dust that glowed orange in my headlights. The air grew dry, thin, carrying the scent of parched earth and distant scrub brush. The city lights were long gone, replaced by a vast, star-strewn canvas. My vehicle bounced over the uneven terrain, the only sound the crunch of tires and the hum of the engine. No exterior lights, no visible signs of life. I parked a safe distance away, cutting my lights and engine. My heart hammered, but my focus sharpened. This was it. The air was still and hot, even at this hour. My forensic training kicked in, assessing the perimeter, looking for tripwires, pressure plates, heat signatures. The building was old, likely abandoned for decades before being repurposed. No cameras were visible on the exterior, a calculated risk or an oversight. I doubted the latter. Reaching a side window, I knelt, pulling a small, specialized optic from my kit. The glass was grimy, but the device pierced through the obscurity. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a single bare bulb. Stacks of cash, bundled in various denominations, were piled on a large, scarred wooden table. Two figures, their faces obscured by the distance and the angle, moved with purpose, feeding crisp bills into the counter. The whirring intensified, then softened, only to begin again. This wasn't just corporate espionage. This was a black operation, funding flowing freely, untraceable. I saw a small, discarded shipping label on the floor near one of the figures. A partial address, a shell company name I recognized from the periphery of Thorne's financial records. A direct link. As I cataloged the details, a floorboard inside creaked loudly. The whirring stopped. One of the figures turned, head cocked, peering into the gloom. I froze, pressing myself against the rough wall, hardly daring to breathe. They were listening. They knew something was amiss. I had what I needed, but getting out was going to be the real challenge. They know you're not buying the official story. The cool evening air offered no comfort, only a crisp reminder of the accelerating danger. I'd driven past my usual turn, opting instead for the discreet route to our fallback. The city lights thinned, replaced by the vast, inky canvas of the desert sky. The low, thrumming sound, a strangely comforting pulse of readiness, was the first thing I registered as I killed the engine. It meant the ally was already inside, working. The air, though still cool, carried the dry scent of dust and distant creosote bushes. I slipped through the reinforced door, the heavy clang behind me echoing in the sparse interior. The ally, a formidable presence with a quiet intensity, looked up from a cluster of monitors, a map of the city's data infrastructure glowing on one screen. Their brow was furrowed, eyes narrowed in concentration, reflecting the cool blue light. A half-eaten energy bar lay beside a worn laptop. "You're late," the ally stated, their voice low, devoid of accusation, simply stating a fact. I was beginning to wonder if they got to you. "Almost," I admitted, shrugging off my jacket. The tension I'd been carrying for hours felt like a physical weight, finally beginning to dissipate in the familiar, secure space. Eleanor reached out, warned me off, said they know I'm not buying the official narrative. The ally pushed a hand through their short, practical hair. "I figured as much. The digital footprint around your movements has spiked. Not clumsy, but noticeable if you know where to look. They're watching." I moved to the large table dominating the room, covered with schematics, satellite images, and printouts of financial transactions. "So, we're out of time. We need to move. Now." "Agreed," the ally said, swiveling their chair to face me fully. "I've been cross-referencing the data from Thorne's encrypted drive with the corporate server logs you pulled. There's a pattern, Blake. The one with the redundant power grid and the armed perimeter patrols? The very same, the ally confirmed, a grim line to their mouth. They're not just moving money, they're laundering information. Encrypted communications, proprietary research data, political directives. It's all being funneled through there, masked as legitimate financial transfers. This was it. The nexus. The true heart of the conspiracy. Thorne hadn't just stumbled onto a corporate fraud. He'd uncovered the entire operational hub. What's inside? What are we looking for? A primary server array, the ally explained, tapping a point on the digital map. They use a proprietary encryption algorithm, one I've been trying to crack for weeks. But if we could get physical access, even for a few minutes, I believe I could bypass their network security and download the raw data. It would be irrefutable. A digital ledger of every illegal transaction, every compromised politician, every stolen piece of intellectual property. The stakes had just ratcheted up another notch. This wasn't just about proving Thorne was murdered. It was about tearing down an entire edifice of corruption. Physical access. That's not going to be easy. It won't, the ally conceded. The facility is under constant surveillance. Infrared, motion sensors, pressure plates, and the patrols are armed. They don't want anyone getting in. My mind raced, piecing together fragments from my forensic work. What about the loading dock? Most high-security facilities have a blind spot, a moment of vulnerability during routine logistics. Deliveries, waste disposal. The Allies' eyes lit up, a flicker of professional interest cutting through the tension. You're thinking about the weekly secure shredding service? They use an external contractor, always on Tuesday nights between 0200 and 0300. There's a 15-minute window when the dock is active, the main bay door open, and internal security is focused on the shredding team's access. A 15-minute window, I repeated, the words tasting like a challenge. That's our entry point. We need to get in, download the data, and get out, all without tripping a single alarm or being seen. And without getting shot, the ally added, their voice flat. This isn't a smash and grab, Blake. This requires precision. Any misstep and we're not just caught, we're silenced. I nodded, the gravity of the plan settling over me. This was the point of no return. We were no longer simply investigating. We were actively dismantling. What do we need? We'll need a secure comms channel, a way to spoof their internal network, and a portable data transfer unit. For your part, Blake, your forensic eye will be crucial. Identifying pressure points, anticipating their response, maybe even creating a localized disruption if needed. I'll handle the network intrusion. My gaze swept over the detailed blueprints of the facility, the red lines indicating laser grids, the blue dots marking camera positions. It was a fortress. But every fortress had a weak point, a design flaw, a human element. And I was good at finding those. We'll need a distraction, I mused, thinking aloud. Something that pulls their attention away from the loading dock, even for a few crucial seconds. Something that seems innocuous, but demands immediate attention. The ally paused, considering my words. A false alarm on the perimeter? Something more organic. This was it, the final gambit. We were walking into a lion's den, but we had the blueprint for its cage. The planning began in earnest, details emerging like sharp facets from a rough stone. We would not fail, Thorne. We would not fail the truth. This was it, the final gambit. The planning began in earnest, details emerging like sharp facets of a diamond, each one critical. I ran a thumb over the worn leather of my forensic kit, the familiar texture a small comfort against the gnawing unease. Inside, the digital evidence, meticulously gathered and cross-referenced, felt heavier than its actual mass. If we don't check in every 15 minutes, the full dataset goes public, and the backup streams are all primed. I nodded, the movement stiff. This wasn't a lab, sterile and predictable. This was the edge of a cliff, and we were about to jump. Let's move. The drive was a blur of desert highway, the landscape flattening into an endless stretch of scrub and distant, jagged mountains. The unique dust composition, the faint residue of an industrial solvent on a polished surface, the peculiar pattern of microfractures in a discarded data chip. Each was a breadcrumb leading to this moment. We arrived at the downtown corporate tower just as the city began its morning thrum. Glass and steel soared into the pale sky, reflecting the nascent sun like a cold, indifferent eye. The building's lobby was a monument to power, hushed and cavernous, marble gleaming under recessed lighting. A security officer, a man with a watchful, unblinking gaze, met us at the elevators. He knew we were coming. "The chairman is expecting you," he stated, his voice devoid of inflection. The ascent felt impossibly slow, the air in the elevator thick with unspoken tension. My knuckles were white where I gripped the handle of my kit. This wasn't just about a single death anymore. It was about the rot beneath the surface of an entire ecosystem. The boardroom was an expanse of polished mahogany and high-backed leather chairs, dominated by a panoramic view of the city. At the head of the table sat the chairman, an imposing figure whose reputation for ruthless ambition preceded him. His silver hair was impeccably styled, his suit tailored to perfection. Beside him, a legal counsel, sharp-eyed and impassive, took notes on a pad. "Blake O'Connell," the chairman said, his voice a low rumble. A false cordiality layered over an unmistakable current of menace. "To what do we owe this early morning intrusion?" I placed my kit on the table with a deliberate thud. "I'm here to present the findings of my extended investigation into the death of the former CEO. A tragic suicide. They were led to believe a convenient narrative. I found something different." I opened my kit, pulling out a small projector and connecting it to my tablet. The screen at the far end of the room flickered to life, displaying the first image. A close-up of the tech executive's hand, the faint, almost invisible abrasion on his index finger. "This wasn't a suicide," I began, my voice clear and steady despite the tremor in my hands. "It was murder, executed with surgical precision to look like a desperate act." The chairman's expression remained carefully neutral, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. The legal counsel shifted, a slight rustle of expensive fabric. The initial assessment missed a crucial detail: the unique composition of dust found on the victim's clothing. It matched samples from a secure, off-site server farm, a location the victim had no reason to be in before his death. I advanced the slide, showing a spectral analysis comparison. And the solvent residue? Not from a cleaning product. It was a specific reagent used in high-end data wipe procedures, found in trace amounts on a discarded memory stick at the scene. A memory stick, I might add, that was later recovered by my team and contained fragments of encrypted data. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. The victim wasn't deleting his own data. He was accessing something he shouldn't have. Something that threatened your carefully constructed empire, Chairman. My gaze locked with his. He discovered a massive scheme of corporate espionage, siphoning off intellectual property from rival companies and manipulating stock prices through insider trading. The suicide note was a forgery, the handwriting a near-perfect match, but the ink composition revealed it was penned hours after his death by a custom-fabricated pen designed to mimic his unique writing pressure. The chairman's composure finally cracked. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the table's edge. "This is preposterous, baseless accusations." "Is it?" I challenged, advancing to the final slide. It was a photograph. A grainy, time-stamped image from a hidden camera at that very server farm, showing the chairman himself, late at night, overseeing the data wipe. The victim was lured there, confronted with his discovery, and then silenced. My colleague, however, was already a step ahead. He tapped his tablet. "Too late, Chairman. The full dossier, including this evidence and the victim's recovered data fragments, has just been disseminated. To every major news outlet, regulatory body, and rival corporate entity we could think of. It's already out there." He lunged for a console on the wall, presumably to cut off communications to stop the digital flood. But it was futile. The damage was done. His untouchable facade shattered, revealing the desperate cornered man beneath. The corporate titan, exposed and broken, watched his carefully built world crumble around him, not with a bang, but with the quiet, insistent hum of data being irrevocably set free. The chairman's face, a mask of contorted rage and terror, dissolved into a guttural roar as the federal agents swarmed the room. Their movements were precise, practiced. One agent, a woman with an unreadable expression, moved directly to the console the chairman had lunged for, her fingers already flying across its surface, confirming the data stream. Another secured the chairman, his flailing limbs quickly subdued. The digital flood had indeed done its work, rendering any last-ditch attempt at concealment utterly meaningless. The room, once a fortress of corporate power, became a scene of controlled chaos, the air thick with the scent of ozone and desperation. I watched, a strange blend of exhaustion and grim satisfaction settling over me. My hands, still slightly trembling from the adrenaline, felt heavy at my sides. The quiet hum of the server racks, which moments ago had felt like a countdown, now seemed to purr with a different kind of energy, a release. Other figures, colleagues from various federal branches, moved in, their faces grim but efficient. They began systematically documenting, securing, and dismantling the elaborate digital infrastructure that had underpinned the chairman's illicit empire. The entire operation, months in the making, had culminated in this stark, undeniable moment. The news broke like a dam. Initial reports were vague, hinting at a major corporate investigation and unprecedented federal action. Within hours, the carefully constructed narrative of the tech executive's suicide began to crumble under the weight of leaked documents and official statements. The media, a ravenous beast, descended upon the story with a fervor I'd rarely witnessed. Headlines screamed, talking heads debated, and the public, initially shocked, quickly turned to outrage. The meticulous details I'd unearthed, the specific ligature marks, the absence of dust on the ledge, the subtle chemical residue, were now being dissected on national television, validating my every suspicion. Days blurred into a relentless cycle of debriefings and evidence reviews. The official reclassification of the tech executive's death from suicide to murder felt less like a victory and more like a heavy stone placed upon the scales of justice. It was a truth I had known in my bones, but hearing it articulated by the district attorney in a crowded press conference carried a different weight. Each word, each confirmation, was a testament to the fact that the initial, easier narrative had been a lie, one that nearly swallowed the truth whole. The professional fallout was immediate and complex. Some lauded my persistence. Others whispered about my stubbornness and disregard for established protocols. The director of my own division, a man who had initially expressed skepticism, now offered a strained congratulations, his eyes betraying a deeper concern for the bureaucratic ripples this case would undoubtedly create. My phone, usually quiet after hours, now buzzed incessantly with calls from journalists, all eager for an exclusive angle. The personal cost, however, was harder to quantify. Exposing the truth was paramount, but the systemic issues it revealed, the layers of corruption, the willingness to sacrifice lives for power and profit, left a bitter aftertaste. It wasn't just a single crime. It was a symptom of a much larger illness, and I felt a profound weariness knowing how entrenched it truly was. A week after the chairman's arrest, I sat in a secure federal office across from the lead agent who had orchestrated the raid. She slid a thick file across the polished table. "Your initial findings," she stated, her voice low, "opened up a lot more than we anticipated." Inside the file were photographs, dozens of them. It was their operational hub for the physical transactions, the illicit payouts, the data dead drops. The image solidified the reality of the network I'd helped dismantle. The sheer scale of it, laid out in these stark, undeniable images, was sobering. The tension, rather than dissipating with the arrests, now shifted, settling into a deeper, more pervasive awareness of the rot within the system. My work was done on this specific case, but the fight, I knew, was far from over. The hum was the soundtrack to the new reality. I sat on an overturned crate, my gaze fixed on the desert safehouse with portable money counter humming. Its digital display, now cleared of the red smudge I'd seen in the photo, cycled through a series of zeros, a testament to the staggering sums it had processed. I remembered the early days, the initial phone call about the tech executive, a seemingly straightforward suicide. How easy it would have been to accept the official narrative, to file the report, and move on. But the subtle inconsistencies, the misplaced coffee cup, the specific ligature marks, the faint scent of ozone, they had pricked at my forensic intuition. Those tiny threads had unspooled a tapestry of lies, revealing a network far more intricate and dangerous than any of us had initially conceived. The discovery had come in layers, each piece of evidence a chisel stroke against the hardened rock of the conspiracy. The encrypted data drives, the shell corporations, the phantom accounts, all of it pointed to a sophisticated operation designed to siphon off intellectual property and influence political decisions. It wasn't merely corporate espionage. It was a carefully constructed shadow economy, funded by illicit data sales and leveraged through strategic political corruption. The tech executive hadn't been a victim of despair, but a casualty, silenced because he knew too much, or perhaps because he tried to break free. My mind replayed the images of the coded messages, the digital breadcrumbs I'd followed from a server farm in the city's industrial district to this very remote location. The sheer scale of it, the audacity, still made my stomach clench. A colleague, an agent from the Federal Investigation Unit, walked in, carrying 2 steaming mugs. "Coffee, Blake?" he offered, his voice low, respectful. He had seen the raw edges of this case as closely as I had, piecing together the legal framework while I had unearthed the physical truths. "Thanks," I murmured, taking a mug. The bitter warmth was a welcome anchor. "Still can't get over it. All this for what? Power?" "Always power," the agent replied, leaning against a stack of sealed evidence boxes. "And the money that buys it. This place, this counter, they were laundering billions, not just for themselves, but for a host of interconnected players. Politicians, rival corporations, even some foreign entities. This was the event, the quiet aftermath of the storm. Other agents were methodically cataloging the stacks of cash, the high-end computing equipment, the burner phones. The operation had been executed with surgical precision, thanks in no small part to the detailed timelines and location data I'd extracted from the executive's seemingly innocuous smart devices. The pieces I'd found, dismissed as irrelevant by others, were the very keys that had unlocked this entire vault of deceit. My gaze drifted to a small, unassuming ledger found tucked beneath a loose floorboard. It contained names, dates, and coded transactions. The definitive proof that tied the tech executive's suicide to a much larger, insidious network. Justice, in its purest form, felt within reach, yet incomplete. We had dismantled a significant node, but the roots of such pervasive corruption ran deep, far deeper than a single desert safehouse. I knew that. The world wasn't suddenly safe, cleansed of all its hidden predators. That thought brought a fresh wave of tension, a tightening in my chest. They'll be looking for new ways to operate. I said, more to myself than to the agent. New vulnerabilities to exploit. He just looked at me, a silent understanding passing between us, which means we'll be looking for them. And that was it. That was the understanding. My role, once confined to the precise parameters of forensic science, had expanded. I wasn't just solving cases. I was uncovering truths that others actively buried, protecting a fragile sense of order from the chaos these hidden networks propagated. The meticulous work, the obsession with detail, the refusal to accept the easy answer. These weren't just professional traits. They were essential tools in a continuous quiet war. I thought of the tech executive, his life extinguished to protect this very operation. His sacrifice, unintended as it was, would not be in vain. My path was clear. There would be other seemingly straightforward cases, other inconsistencies. The hum of the money counter, a persistent reminder of what we'd found, continued its rhythmic pulse into the vast, indifferent desert night.